So you guys, I want to welcome everybody back to our Ethics and World Religion series. I am Dr. Paige Rawson, and I'm so blessed and excited to be sitting here with Dr. Susan Chen. And Dr. Chen, you have so much to share with us. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, and just as friends, you were saying, and also as colleagues. But you know, you have to me been such an inspiration and a motivation, really, since we both arrived at the same time, right? Of course, you have a deeper relationship and a more longevity with Wingate University through your husband Jim, who we spoke with the other day. But are yourself a wealth of knowledge, and I maybe just by way of introduction, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, or tell the students a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the study of Buddhism, please?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Paige and Dr. Rawson. Okay.
It's okay. Your first name's okay.
Okay, let's put it this way. And since the topic today is in relation to the Buddhism I practice, the Buddhism I had the chance to have a privilege to observe, to participate, the community, the Buddhist community, I have a privilege to participate. Okay, yes. So very, very quick intro, into how I got into all of this. Okay, and told us probably is the only one of her own kind, at Wingate to talk about this topic. Long story short, okay, and I grew up in Taiwan. Is the country, and actually I say in the family, right? We grew up in the household with the grandma was a devoted Buddhist, and then at the same time, my parents belong to the generation of the intellectual youth, refused any kind of faith. They don't have any.
So more humanism
they basically, my parents' upbringing and the upbringing they try to give to the children is always about the right and wrong according to the version of Confucius teaching they can recognize. That's all they have. Okay.
Got it.
And then plus a little bit of my mom's idea about the modernity and the fancy way to grow up. You all look to learn, to read, to write, to play piano, etc. But at the same time, because we actually literally grew up with a grandma, and the grandma is the days he need to go to a temple, right? And I really didn't know what's the worship he was doing, but I know that will be a fancy day of outing. I will be put on my best clothes. And then at the end, if I can behave myself for that duration, come to the end, outside of the temple, it's such a community. It's always a place I will get some special treat. Okay, so and going to the temple is really actually.
I felt the same way about church, honestly. So
yes, that's pretty much is the same thing, right, for kids. And then I grew up in that society around the late 80s, and then that was the time, and for the college youth, and oddly enough, particularly for my female friends in college, it started to become actually very fashionable to go to the nunnery, okay? And so many of my friends in the time of a fast changed society, and the women and the young women, overnight we get the option of go to college. We are equal on everything, but the only thing is still unequal to us is our sexual and gender identity. People still expect to get married and get involved. You should hang out with the boys by your sophomore year, junior year, if you still don't have a boyfriend. And then that was seen as a sign of something wrong with you. Okay.
I tell you, no, honestly, this was a joke when I was in college, that was actually quite accurate. They would say that men would go, and I'm in my 40s now, right? So we're talking like 90s, the late 90s. Men would go to college to get their BA or their BS. Women would go to get their MRS.
Yeah.
So that gender binary and hierarchy still too. Anyway, just to try.
That itself is a global phenomenon, right? So anyway, So basically, alternative way is so many of my female friends, including myself, attract to the idea of maybe I want to join, the nunnery, Catholic nunnery, and then but the Buddhism is a kind of a more common way to go, right? So some of my friends indeed eventually, and then become nuns, become monks. Okay, that's that trend. I was kind of at the peripheral. I never really get attracted to the idea and start to read some Buddhist teaching by myself, but never really get too serious about this. It's still life is full of attractions and distractions, right? And then by the time I got to United States, and the early days when I was in this country, by the way, everybody I was in here and before you guys are born, okay? And that's, I was now talking about this story exactly 30 years ago, okay? So back then in United States, and particularly in the place, a college town like Madison, Wisconsin, right? It itself is all sort of alternative new age stuff, and it's actually in its prime time, I would say, in this country. Okay, so basically, I didn't really know too many of anything of American culture, and then try to learn anything American itself is just like is the divider of the Mars and the Earth, okay? And then, but that corner of a college life or anything associated with the Tibetan communities and the Tibetan form of Buddhism. And it's something I can start to feel related to, at least, I learned with the Buddhist vocabulary. I already have some vague impression. And then
so interestingly, then it was not actually until you came to study in the United States that you really started to get into and interested in Tibetan Buddhism.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
And actually, I took my Buddhist vow and from my teacher, and my teacher is actually Geshe Soba. Geshe Soba is actually responsible pretty much for Tibetan Buddhism get popularized in this country. Pretty much all the first generations of translators of Tibetan Buddhism into English is all Geshe Soba's students. Okay. And I was happened to be, on that same campus with him, and then some of my friends, and they are the devotees, followers of him. And then I hang out with my friend, and then they went to the Deer Park outside of Madison, for the Sunday teaching. I tag along, and at one point, Geshe Soba just called me in and said, "It's time for you to take a refuge." And then I didn't think too much. I didn't know what that means. I just went and did it. Okay.
That is interesting because I'm thinking about my own conversion into Christianity, and I prayed the prayer. Right. It was not something that I really was thinking consciously about. It was just something that I did.
Yeah.
Sorry, trying to find parallels, and I don't want to draw any sort of like.
No, I think that is in each of us, right? And particularly this recording is for the Wingate students, for the students doing the GPS 310, right?
Yeah.
I think please, everyone, and don't downplay the inner connection and the inner voice. And so long as you are willing to set aside, from day to day, a little bit, just 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there, and we call, mindful moments. You call it in the miniature form of meditation. We can later on talk about what that is about. But just allow yourself have that corner of your mind. Give yourself an opportunity to go into the wood by yourself. Put down your cell phone, and allow that inner self start to actually open up. And then when the time is right, wherever that is, could be, and you are deepened relation, to the Lord, to the Jesus you were already being introduced to since you were a baby, right? Although you didn't know too much why you needed to relate to that guy. And the same thing in my case. I heard the name of Bodhisattva, Buddha, this or that, but it didn't really mean anything to me until, I had my own moments. Yeah, and then when that moments come, and then you start to say, okay, I got it, wherever it is. I went into that very simple ceremony, and then Geshe Soba belong to the bench of the Tibetan Buddhism is, I would say, the least ritualistic one. So the entire ceremony didn't take more than 10 minutes. And all he did is basically just say, okay, if you are willing to accept, the 3 vows, and then from this point onward, keep these 3 vows, and then better them, from time to time. And then he made a very hilarious promise to me. One day, once you're really ready, you might actually want to become a nun. Okay.
Wow. Well, hold on. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you, Susan, because this is important, right? So in the book that the students are using, the Hate book, she goes over some of these things, but I want you to, if you could, just briefly, the 3 vows.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
The 3
yes,
vows.
Yes.
If you could.
That's the 3 vows, and 3 vows is supposedly is once you took the vow and you will promise a commit of not doing it. But on the other hand, by trying not to do it, and then in a way that's start to, and now in retrospect, a quarter century later, I see that is the gift, okay, for that 10 minutes. The 3 vows is actually very, very simple, okay? Of course, for the Buddhist tradition, you took a vows, of a different level. And then the vow, involve a different degree of ritual complexity, so to speak, right? And the teacher basically took you through that process. In theory, he will be the responsible for your path, right? And so at least for the tradition, I got involved, interestingly, and for some of his disciples, he gave a very, very detailed instruction, okay? But in my case, as I think probably at the time, he saw me already, I was really not quite ready yet. So I think I got the most minimum version of the vows, okay? The 3 one is very simple, okay? And
which may be good for our audience too, right? I mean,
yes,
keep
okay.
it simple, so that's good, yes.
Okay. And the 3 vows is from this point onward, I will try my best to reduce the habitual tendency of get angry. Okay, so basically 1, no anger. Oh, good. Sorry, the start and the sequence is always start with no greed. Okay. And the number 1, no greed. Number 2, no anger. And the number 3, which the term for he used, and no delusion. Okay, no any kinds of I will call delusion. I will prefer to translate into any form of blind obsession or blind attachment. Okay, that's all. Okay, that's all I was given. Okay.
So I mean the basics, right? But still, that's where you were, and he knew that.
Yeah, took a whole lifetime, and we still have that moments, and the the greed, okay, and then easy for me to see, and even before I took the vow, for someone really care about the window shopping, for instance, right? Never care about the cosmetics. And then that vow didn't really mean anything because I don't have a desire for that, okay? But for me, and that greed, G-R-E-E-D, coming for, I heard so-and-so, they watch a movie, and then how come I'm the only one didn't know that? Okay, and then everybody is reading something. How come I'm the only one never heard the name of that book? Okay, and then that's
so almost like jealousy.
Oh yeah,
in some sense.
Yeah. So pretty much this is the Buddhist way, teacher is categorically they only give you 3, and then once you start to analyze it, and then start to realize, oh my God, and how I got to these points, and allowed myself, as a person, feel the heart, the heat, the cold, and the pain. I dislike it, so entangled, with all these emotions. Yeah, and then of course, once you get a little bit deeper into it, and then that is something I'm still working on, and every day I still, try to listen to the teachings I can find, I can relate it to online these days, and then read the books, is how, basically the Buddhist idea is unwinding. Okay, none of us was born with the anger, with the greed, with the delusion. Okay, this is all just basically we call the socialization. And then yeah, they call, is of course, by the way, for Buddhism, just like for Jainism or Hinduism, you guys probably already heard about this. The bottom line of a commonality of all of them is the reincarnation, karma and the reincarnation. The reason some of us is so easy to get angry, so hard, to let go of X, Y, Z, and then so much so, and care about, the self pride, and or the other one going around with the deeper self-doubt, right? This is basically Buddhists have two explanations of this. One is this is coming with you from your previous life, okay? The previous impression you left, from the previous life and manifested at this time. That is one. Two is social-wise, environmental-wise, and we are part of our environment. We are socialized into who we are before we are fully aware of this self, right? So basically, Buddhist idea is very, in a way, is put in words is all very simple, but put it into the practice, and then it's a good way to keep you busy. But I would say the busy in a meaningful and constructive way is unwinding that process and then recognize, oh, after all, just let me recognize, I tended to get a very upset.
Awareness, right? I mean,
angry. Yeah, and then slow down. Of course, then we can talk about it later. They have the mechanism and the method you can adapt, to do that. But ultimately, the goal is eventually, once you actually unwind that, eventually you will find that true self. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and in that true self, in that sense, you are me, I am you, okay? And then the divider we feel, and this is the people I belong to, and I can identify with those people. They are disgusting and they are ugly. I couldn't bear, and with them, but that divider didn't there. Okay, that divider is because we equally was engulfed by, the part of the self is coming from the place we are not responsible for. Okay, so the only thing we are responsible is unwind that process. All right, sorry, and this is supposed to
no, it's good. It's good
the brief intro, but yeah.
But you're giving us, I think you're giving us a taste of sort of all the pieces that we're wanting to discuss in the video anyway. So I mean, this is great. It's a wonderful introduction, because I mean, what I'm thinking right now is about what does it actually mean to be Buddhist? And I think that you're sort of opening that door for this question, because you've touched upon sort of the understanding of humanity and our socialization or our programming, right? And what it is to be Buddhist is to deprogram or unlearn through mindfulness awareness, right? And there are practices, spiritual practices as a Buddhist that can lead to what you said, and this idea of a true self beyond our conditioning, beyond our socialization, beyond right our past, or and this is the idea of reincarnation. But what would you say? I mean, Susan, if you could, and this is such a hard question to answer, because it's trying to distill something that's so big and beautiful and complex in a matter of minutes. But what would you say? I mean, if you could say, this is what it means to be a Buddhist on a personal sense and a global sense.
Okay.
Right. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, what does it actually mean? So we've talked about the vows. So these are clearly commitments that that are intended to be kept. But what does it mean to be Buddhist? I mean, what differentiates a Buddhist? And so in light of that, so what does it mean to be a Buddhist? But also, you talked a little bit about Tibetan Buddhism. Maybe you could speak to the other branches or aspects, parts of Buddhism.
Okay, let's go with the foundation, the branch first, and then we go backward. That will make it a little bit easier. Okay.
Awesome.
I should do that as well.
Let's get comfortable.
Okay. A Buddhism, the simple way to usually people see, the Theravada. Okay, Theravada is the oldest form of Buddhism, and then the one usually through the Pali text rather than the Sanskrit text, travel south and get popularized in Southeast Asia, right? And then there's then versus to Theravada is the Mahayana, right? Mahayana is the trend of Buddhism. And when actually both of Theravada go to south, and the Theravada Mahayana eventually entered, Central Asia, where Pakistan and now, Afghanistan is, right, in that area. And both of them, they are went with the trading route, right, went along with the trading route.
Yeah.
And then the third one is sometimes called Vajrayana, okay? And the Vajra is the Sanskrit term for the thunderbolt, okay? Thunderbolt is a very important ritual item and to the Tibetan form of Buddhism. Okay, so the easiest way to recognize these three is Theravada is the oldest Buddhist tradition. So therefore, and for Theravada, and then the role model is Buddha, is historical Buddha, right? Shakyamuni Buddha. And he has basically, we can trace his bio story. He was a prince and then live a protective life and then left the palace and see, people are suffering and the life he's recognized there's more than, my comfortable life, in my palace, right? And then his story went from there, and then he reached his own moment of enlightenment, usually crystallized in the famous idea of Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, right? And then eventually Buddha is the one, and by recognizing, the nature of the so-called Four Noble Truths, we can talk about what they are later on.
The Four Noble Truths, yes, good, yeah.
Yeah. But eventually, since he has such a clear mental recognition to the degree, he still functions as a human being on earth. He still take action, he still talk, he still have his desire, intention, etc. But none of his thought, his speech, and accumulate any new karma for him. Okay, so come to the end of his life, he made this very clear to his disciples. He is went into the famous idea of nirvana, right?
Yes.
Went into the non-existence, and then basically nirvana, simple way to translate it, he just made the announcement that he stopped the cycle of reincarnation, right? Yeah. He is basically as a personality, he is completely free from, the consequences of his action. Right, and everything he did, since he really didn't actually attach to whatever he was doing, he did stop leave the imprint to his consciousness, right? So therefore, his soul and eventually free, from that cycle of reincarnation. And then very interesting. This is the key for Theravada Buddhism. Okay, he made it very clear. He said to his disciples, guys, there's no reason to be sad about me, okay? And I'm getting older, I'm dying, but I live the full fulfillment of my life, okay? I'm going to a nirvana. From this point onward, you guys, you are your own lamp.
That is so fascinating, right? You know where I'm going to go with this, because this is in John, or maybe you don't, in John, this is essentially what Jesus says to his disciples, right? I am leaving you, but you have the Holy Spirit. So let that guide you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. So basically, his idea is I see myself as a role model. You guys, listen to my teaching, followed me, and then after his moment of enlightenment, supposedly historically he has over 40 years of a teaching career, right? And if you guys, and are so basically immersed with my teaching. And then at this point, and then you don't need anything anymore from me, okay? And you can do this on your own, okay? Then this become the signature character of Theravada Buddhism.
Good, okay.
For Theravada Buddhism, they are not looking for anyone, return to the earth like a Messiah. And continue, these intimate engagements. And in contrast, and the Mahayana, the bench, go to Central Asia, right? And then you usually at this point, I have to make my role as a scholar of Buddhism versus, and the practitioner of Buddhism very clear, okay? From the practitioner's perspective, and Buddhism is also about those we call the Bodhisattva. Okay,
Yes.
those actually reach the same level of enlightenment, clarity of mental energy as a Buddha had. And
Yes.
but at the same time, because of their compassion, their universal love for everybody else on earth, they actually refused to went into a nirvana. They actually volunteered themselves,
Yes. Yes.
went back to earth with us. Okay.
Yes.
And so basically, simple way to see the difference between Theravada and then Mahayana is the version of Buddhism, highlight, and the mystical figure of Bodhisattva. And then Bodhisattva, then where that came from as a scholar, and academically we know, and this is pretty much the very, very commonly spread belief in, the protective angel, so to speak, right? The protective spirits, they are not necessarily the divine beings yet, okay? That they are not that perfect, but somehow they are not the ordinary human, right? They have that extraordinary intention, motivation to do good, and then in that give them the strength, and then these are the one, return taker, volunteer them. So everybody want to get out the reincarnation, that cycle of reincarnation, right? Yes. They are the one basically just put themselves back in. Okay.
Yeah.
They are come back to us, and then at the same time. And since they,
which is like, I have to say, very similar to this idea of the suffering servant within Judaism and then later Christianity, right? The idea of sacrificing oneself for the greater good, right?
Okay.
I mean,
so
again,
yeah, so basically the version of a Buddhism and have a Bodhisattva. And then interestingly, and one way with the Silk Road, travel to China, and then to Japan, to Korea, right? And then to a certain degree, cross the Pacific in the early 20th century to come to United States, okay?
Yeah.
It's all actually belong to that bench. And then that same version of a Buddhism with a Bodhisattva, and travel the south with the traders back to India, and localized, and then be intersect with the tantric tradition, and very popular in the in India around the time of the early centuries after the Common Era, so to speak. Okay, and that bench of Buddhism with the Bodhisattva, but in addition to that, and highlight, and the magics and the ritual can do, and emphasize the ritual procedures, so to speak. Okay, that version of Buddhism, and then eventually with the missionaries went to Tibet. Okay, and that's why, the Tibetan form of Buddhism called Vajrayana, right? Vajra supposedly is the ritual item, right? And is reference to one of the Bodhisattva, and the Tibetans feel actually very intimate with. Okay, and then is he actually throw the thunderbolt, and crack open, the ignorance of humanity, and then allow the enlightenment moments of each living beings, so to speak, come to exist. Okay, so that is the basic is what I'm talking about. Yeah, Vajrayana Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. All right. Okay, so this is the 3 benches. All right.
Good. So then from there, there are 3 branches. So then what is it that makes then, if you've got 3 different branches, right? I'm also thinking of denominations. I'm thinking, right, there's, these different sects and other religions. So what then is something that you would say is uniform that makes if there are these 3 different branches or varieties of Buddhism, what makes one a Buddhist, right?
What's make all the 3 are Buddhist? Buddhist way of thinking, right? And how that
philosophy
me as a person at the individual level, I call myself a Buddhist. And at the same time, I see this is something global, see this is universal, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So actually, let's put it this way, and in a way, it's very simple, and to a certain degree, I think I already talked about this. So long as you recognize and so much trouble each of us got into, or and our community, our country got into, or and the earth got into, right? Is all because basically these kinds of misguided emotion, right? And
Yes.
then as long as I am willing to actually recognize, how much so I already go detour, and then willing to, to come back to the past, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And then I will be fine. And then that is the same to everybody else. And then Theravada and Mahayana and Vajrayana might have a little bit different emphasis of and who led that path, and what specifically you can do once you get onto that path. And
But the path itself is the same.
yeah, the core idea is essentially is the same, right? Essentially, it's the idea is to go back to, I think this is a good place to talk about a little bit of Buddha's idea of the Four Noble Truths, right? And the Noble Truth one.
So talk to us about that. Let's go for it. So the Four Noble Truths then are.
Yeah, Four Noble Truths is something, and it doesn't matter, Theravada and the Mahayana and the Vajrayana teachers all say the same thing, okay? And the Buddha's, actually noble is not a good translation, it's old-fashioned translation. These days, I prefer to tell students, four ultimate truths, okay?
Ultimate.
Okay,
yes.
Ultimate is easier way. And the ultimate one, life is essentially, it's about the suffering.
Suffering.
Okay? It's actually a perception of suffering. Okay. And then at this level, Buddha is talking about everything we can experience, we can observe, right? And then pretty much to him, for instance, the famous model he used is the process of from the birth to death, right? And usually we celebrate the birth and more about the death, right?
Yeah.
And but why for Buddha, this entire process is inherently is about suffering, and of course the suffering is translation of the Sanskrit word, right? And in the contemporary English, we need to recognize essentially he's talking about any experience of a disappointment, disillusion, and dissatisfaction, anxiety, resentments. Okay, and for instance, students usually find, okay, if you say someone is dying, so I feel sad about this. That is suffering I can recognize. But why you say a newborn, a shower for the baby, and my birthday party? Why that is also being seen as a suffering? Usually students stop there. Okay, and the Buddha's teaching is not for me. He was wrong, because I want the life to be a joy, to be happiness. About happiness, how can he told me, life is all about the suffering. Basically, he was talking about just let's use a birthday as an example, right? Birthday. So long as if you can be completely without any discrimination and avoid the topic of death, and then embrace the idea of a newborn. If you can get to that state of mind, it's okay to celebrate your birthday. For him, the torture and the pain he was talking about is this kind of underlined, unsettled feeling we have about this process, right?
Absolutely.
We want to highlight the usefulness.
The good. We want the good. We don't want the bad. And so there's this implicit hierarchy and a binary that we create where we want to avoid pain and seek pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so basically this is the ultimate truth. What? Okay, how often and the life we are set into the situation, we experience discontent, resentments, and sometimes literally the physical, mental torture to each other, right? And then you name it, you see it, right? And then number two, ultimate truth, number two, and then Buddha start to analyze all of these feeling, above, generically they call suffering, right? Where this came from? And then in his analysis, usually we say he must be the first psychologist, right?
Yeah, right.
That's why we feel this way. And then his recognition, oh, everywhere we start to feel the pain and feel the discontent, usually is the problem of the desire. Okay, we want this, we don't want that. When Buddha talk about the desire, is actually the two sides of the same coin, right? What we couldn't have enough, we couldn't let go of. And on the other hand, something, the negative desire, absolutely I don't want.
Resist,
okay?
resist. Yes, absolutely.
That is basically, you say, cause of the, basically the, like the life circle from the life to death, right? That is the nature, and the part of the natural process itself is neutral. And the pain or joy, whatever we call it, is basically is very subjective perception. And he was second ultimate truth. He's talking about that that perception itself is caused by our desire. Okay. And then that led to his ultimate truth number 3. And then he started to sound horribly, usually students get amazed by this. For horribly pessimistic, this guy by the ultimate truth number 3. He started to sound horribly naive, horribly optimistic. He started to say, don't worry about it. Once you start to recognize, desire is the cause, just stop it.
It's just that easy. Just stop.
Okay, and then the ultimate truth number 4, then it's become easy, right? And the ultimate truth number 4 is equivalent of his famous A4 the path.
Eightfold path. Yeah.
Sometimes these days I just call the 8-step program. Okay, so basically it comes
the
out
8-step program. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and for the right recognition at that point onward is all about the ethical code, developed through his teaching, right? And then the step number 7 is the mindfulness, and the ultimate goal, step number 8 is the concentration, right? And the most famous one these days, all kinds of app and encourage people be mindful and take it to the public school and even to teach to the kindergarteners, start the day with 5 minutes of mindfulness is actually step number 7 of that pamphlet, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically these are 4 noble truths, and then the A4 the path is essentially shared by all the 3. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let me ask you this then. What about traditions and practices, right, that stem from these basic principles? As in your experience traveling, right, but also as a practitioner, so not just as a scholar, but as a practitioner, what would you say are there any rituals, traditions, practices that stem from these fundamental precepts?
Okay. The precepts, and let me see. The precepts is in a way, and this is the place, and the Buddhism and the Jainism have start to actually overlap, and scholarly, sometimes we just really say, never mind, who knows who is borrowing from whom, is no longer important. Okay.
Yeah.
Really back to the time, and for the founding figure like Buddha, founding figure of Mahavira for Jainism at the time, the idea of non-killing, and is very important to the Vedic society.
Yes.
The precept is very simple: no killing and no stealing, right? And you can say stealing here means any form of cheating. Okay. You try to cheat for your test. That you try to
plagiarizing.
Yes. Okay. And then no excessive sexual pleasure. Okay. And basically this is by extension is talking about this all sorts of sensuous experience. Is good food, and good sound and good music. You can enjoy it, but not indulge. Okay. And then the number 4, and watch out your mouth. Okay, no lying, no gossiping, no backbiting. Okay. And then the last one, and then this is clearly from the ancient time before alcohol, the impact, to the human body was discovered, and they already observed the phenomenon, but essentially is no consumption of anything, cause the intoxicant effect. Okay, so basically, the idea of a drug is definitely alcohol. Alcohol is okay and for the medicinal usage, but alcohol is not for the indulgence. Okay, and then of course all of these precepts this is basically the minimal one, and for the basically non-monastic practitioners, right?
So that's for the general public, right? Not for the monastics.
For the monastic, all these 5 were extended to 108. Some version can go into over 200. Okay, so basically then that's itself, and then there's a school of a subset of Buddhism, just really actually research studied about, give a justification of all these moral conduct, etc. Right? But we don't need to go that. But I want to come back to this in terms of the real practice. And
exactly, right, yes, ritual is real practice. Good.
Practice is the diet, right? And Theravada Buddhism and to larger degree Mahayana Buddhism are all very particularly about being vegetarian. Okay, and then of course then later on we can talk a little bit, being vegetarian or not vegetarian, and then you need to have the ecological condition, like on the Tibetan plateau, how you can be a vegetarian. Okay, is impossible. So Tibetan branch of Buddhism and the practitioners, they need to find a different way engage with the animal consumption to justify what they're doing. Okay, but we can go there a little bit later. And but in terms of the diet practice and to the Theravada or Mahayana community, is actually very, very particularly about the kinds of vegetarian diet. And the vegetarian diet, particularly for the household, ordinary household usage, is okay to have onion, ginger, spice into your cooking. And but for the monastic cooking, then you have to be on a vegetarian, minus green onion, minus ginger, minus garlic. Okay, you name it, because any kinds of the spice potentially can rouse, make you excited. Physically, sexually, that was the no-no zone.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, we can go into talking about vegetarianism now, actually. So let me tell you, just to give you an idea, we've got about probably 5 to 10 more minutes together. Okay. And so I want to, just in light of how long the video needs to be, and considering the amount of time that our students, and information that we're giving our students. So let's talk about it. I mean, I think maybe since we're kind of shifting now into thinking more ethically, right? Vegetarianism is an ethical decision, right? As a Buddhist. So maybe we could speak to then, and this also being a practice of real life Buddhists, can we speak to some of just sort of like the ethical practices, or how would a Buddhist deal with ethical dilemmas around, for instance, climate change or sustainability. So thinking ecologically, but also thinking in terms of social justice, humanitarian efforts, right? And I'm going to let you sort of go where you want to go, because I'm sure.
Sure. And let's talk about the eco limitation for the Tibetan Buddhist, right? And to observe vegetarianism. Okay, so basically this idea of no killing, no harm. By the way, this precept itself is go the two directions. Okay, harming is not necessarily you do to others, it's what you do to yourself. Okay, so basically suicide is definitely was considered as a non-ethical. Okay, of course, if you do everything right, to be mindful of the rousing of your emotion and find a way, to let go of it. There's no temptation no suicidal temptation, right? Okay, so go back to the diet issue, and then that is will lead to the idea of environmental concern, the eco issue, right? And in the high plateau, and then barely have any vegetables can survive. And then how you can be vegetarianism. And so basically The Tibetans, most of the Tibetan Buddha practitioners, and they still eat meat, but they see meat consumption is out of the necessity, is not out of enjoyment. Okay, it's not about the taste of meat. So they evolve a very, very specific, and the restrictions. For instance, Tibetans don't eat fish. Okay, they consider on the plateau all of the lakes are sacred. Okay, and then creature in the lake definitely is the sacred of the sacred. So you don't consume more fish, and then they do a little bit of calculation. I slaughtered, a yak. A yak can feed the entire family for the entire year. I sacrifice, the life of one animal out of necessity. Okay, that is ethically more acceptable. And in contrast, for Tibetans, it's very disgusting, to see people consume chicken. Okay, any small 2 legs animal, they are calculating how many chickens you need to kill for the entire year. All right, and so basically, yak basically is a part of that ecosystem. No part of the animal was wasted. Okay, pretty much, from the skin to the hair and the meat, the bone, every piece of the meat, every piece of animal was utilized, and then eventually yak was actually worshipped. Okay, and try to mistreat, abuse a yak was considered as a crime. Okay, and you can be outcast from the environment, from your community, simply if so and so get the rumor say so and so abuse the animal. All right, okay, it's basically that's the place, animal in their life. And then go back to the issue of these days sometimes people call green Buddhism, sometimes call the eco-Buddhism. Okay, and then basically the idea is basically we can unwind ourselves, right? And then once each of us, if we are the embodiment of the positive energy, and then we put it back to the environment, we will actually transform the environment. All right, okay. This idea is basically for some of the Buddhist teachers, they will start to say, this doesn't matter Theravada or all these 3 benches, and those teachers teaching, for they start to see the more advanced students, they will see, what, Nirvana doesn't need to be anywhere else. Okay, and for the Mahayana Buddhism, those believe in the Pure Land. Okay, where is the Pure Land? The Pure Land is here. So long as we change our mentality, we recognize and then each consumption we got involved into it. If we are willing to minimize, the burden we put on the earth, and the earth will become a better place. Just
yes. Well, this is interesting too, Susan, because the thing that I'm thinking about is that text where Jesus says, people are asking, where is the kingdom of heaven? When will it come? And he says, it's not here, it's not there. The kingdom of God is within you. Basically, the kingdom of God is here and now, which essentially, right, could be a very Buddhist framework, right? To think about in the way that you're speaking of, right? I mean, thinking about Mahayana Buddhism, right? The Pure Land is here. It is now, right? Now, and we live this out this way in the present.
It's essentially it's exactly the same idea, right? Wow. So basically at that level, and if we say there's something ultimate about the reality and our illusion of the reality, and then the process, as I keep using the word of unwinding, that this unwinding get us to the place we need to be mindful. Essentially, this is not me. Okay, I didn't have that level of understanding, to teach Buddhist teaching, but I can guarantee you, for the most basically ready the teacher from you name it, from Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama. Okay, and all the way through and to the only, to my knowledge, the only Mahayana monk currently 94 years old, is probably the only Buddhist monk actually have his office in UNESCO. Okay, they are essentially all talking about the same idea. Okay, they are all actually share the idea of don't They don't even encourage anybody, to convert, okay, into Buddhism. They say if you were born into the Christian community and just basically widen, deepen your strength and your faith with Jesus, okay? If you are born to be a Muslim, okay, and just studied with your imam, get into the bottom of Quran, okay, and ultimately, essentially, and then the way we adjust our relationship with each other, our relationship with our environment is all the same, right? It's all just let go of that ego, okay? And then
letting go of the ego. It's so true. It's so, and in every tradition, that is a fundamental teaching. I mean, really, right? Keep going. I'm with you.
Yeah, it is, right? And then if, for instance, like a Bodhisattva, right? And the Bodhisattva and went to East Asia, went to Tibet, essentially in the Mahayana or Vajrayana Buddhism, it's essentially the same idea. They are not necessarily looking for, and when, that ultimately the bigger Bodhisattva will come to my door, okay? They are actually saying it's the other way around. You know what? And you are a tiny Bodhisattva sitting in front of me. I am the Bodhisattva, okay? And so basically, as the way I told my GPS 120 students, if you ever have that moment of altruism in your heart, okay, you are so craving to do good for others, you feel happy, so long as you can give someone something and give a good words, give a smile, anything, and then you wish you couldn't give enough. And then that is the sign, what? And for the Buddhists, they will say, you are already that Bodhisattva.
Yes, you're embodying, yes, you are the embodiment of. Absolutely.
Maybe you are the Bodhisattva still, taking a nap. You still need to actually wake up, okay? And then you still need, go to the program and then move onward, from the first grade primary school all the way through, move up a little bit, okay? Pull out that potential. And so in that sense, no one, there's no reason to hate anyone, right?
But that's good. I like the way you're putting it though, Susan, too, is it's not about conversion, right? No. I mean, even as you're talking about the Dalai Lama and also, right, this 94-year-old monk, I mean, the basis of the teaching is not, you need to convert to our religion. No, the basis of the teaching is enter fully into yours. And in doing so, you likewise will come into this way of living that is, I mean, really, I talk to my students about this all the time, right? What is the fundamental rule or precept in all of these religions, right? It's that idea of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Like respecting someone else's tradition, even as you respect and honor your own. It's not about trying to change or manipulate, right? No. It's about honoring and holding space for, and I mean, even at the, before we even started recording, you and I were talking about this, in this time, I mean, we're in such a turbulent time, right? We've, our expectations around COVID, I mean, and its perceived end, right? It just keeps extending. We're in the middle of an election that keeps extending. And it's just the only thing that we can expect right now really is the unexpected. And it's that impermanence, I think, also that is a part of sort of the Buddhist framework or the Buddhist philosophy or paradigm that I think we're experiencing collectively right now, right? Not just in the United States, but globally. It's so unpredictable. And so how now, I mean, thinking with you and thinking about Buddhism, right? What do we do now? I mean, what do we do now about there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of fear. And so how can we have sort of an ethical response? How can we learn, even as Christians or Jews, from a Buddhist way of being too, how to approach or address such uncertainty, right? These turbulent times.
I think it's actually the calmness, okay? And really, literally, just that 5 minutes of a day. And then basically, this is something I learned, through the Black Lives Matters, okay? And then this summer, I actually recognize and then how many of the Buddhist practitioners are actually are the activists working on racism in this country,
participating in and
yeah,
chance,
and
yeah,
then
absolutely.
so I think the fundamentally and the bottom line, if we want to have a more conversation, we can continue this. You want to how you cut in this video, I don't care. Okay, so the idea is actually like a Black Lives Matters, right? And the movement itself can quickly exhaust all of us. And but on the other hand, if we want to see, the positive results of the movement, each of us need to take a step back, give us a little bit of mental, emotional room to process this, to refresh our energy, so to speak. Okay, and then recognize, the historical entanglement of the issue, and then recognize, to unwinding these entanglements is take a lot of patience, take a lot of compassion, take a lot of understanding of each other, right? So this idea of I'm on the right side, you are the wrong side, this won't take us go anywhere, okay? And then we need to recognize, this universal entanglement, this universal level of the Buddhist term we call this is our common karma, okay? This is a communal karma, okay? It's not only yours or mine because your skin color or my skin color. We are in this together. No one is getting the peace. And then so therefore, of course, the good sign of the Black Lives Matter movement is this time we see the spectrum of ethnicity join the movement is no longer about the blackness, right? It's not no longer about the one ethnicity. It's everybody joining. That is definitely is the good sign, and we start to see each other. We start a true humanity and the core of the humanity. That is
it's so good. Well, and what you're saying too.
Yeah,
what you're saying too. Oh,
yeah,
ahead,
the
sorry.
next step is basically my concern, my Buddhist concern is we want this momentum not quickly get evaporated. We couldn't afford, to be quickly exhausted, quickly, descend into another round of this illusion. And by doing that, and I think, and then some of these activists is based in Charlotte. Okay, can you believe? Okay, have you heard the name of Ruth King?
Ruth King. I don't.
Yeah,
Talk to me about Ruth King.
Yeah, Ruth King is actually she is a life coach, and she is the African American Buddhist. And now that itself is become a subset of Buddhism, become a very is coming to its full form. And just at the current moment, we are talking about they are putting an anthology together, just called the Black and the Buddhist. It's forthcoming in the first week of December. Okay.
Wow.
I'm waiting, and then I try to gather their voice here, there, and then, but I'm happy to see they are now actually putting together.
Wow, I'm looking right now too. She has right on her website, the Mindful of Race Institute.
Yes.
So really the merging of mindfulness and thinking about race, right? And the thing that I was going to say too is that even in my own mindfulness practice and meditation, that piece that you're talking about being able to step back and to see the larger picture, right? I mean, often we're sucked right into the middle of things and then into this sort of vortex of emotion and anger or this or that, right? I mean, the conflict. And so one of the, I think, precious gifts of meditation is the capacity to be able to step out of, and even thinking about the cycle of samsara, right? How do we step out of this and not continue to allow ourselves to be pulled in, right, into the desire or into the craving? And that's it. I mean, it's like it's a beautiful gift and a power to be able to disentangle, or as you say, to unwind, right?
Yeah,
How do we
yeah.
unwind?
So basically, I don't care how you guys are going to editing, this video, but I think I should be responsible since we keep talking about the mindful. I needed to add this very, very quickly, okay? Particularly for our students for 18 years old, for 19 years
This
old.
is, and this may be where we wrap it up, because I feel like what you're about to say is probably something that everybody really needs to hear. So go ahead. I mean, all of these things are great, but go ahead.
So it's this mindful is not something we're talking about. Anyone will get it overnight. Okay, if that is simple, then there's no fun. Okay, and then there why you have the famous for some set of Tibetan Buddhism, and for the really advanced practitioner, they went to the retreat meditation. The most famous one is you went to the retreat duration of 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days. Okay, all right. Yeah. So this is not something to happen overnight. On the other hand, it's okay. So all the practice, this is the step 7 of Buddha's 8-step programs, right? And ultimately, the 8th step is you reach the level of concentration, the famous Japanese expression Zen. Okay, everybody talk about the Zen, but didn't know what that is. Okay, Zen is talking about the state of mind. You are so still. So basically, nothing is a move at all. You stay there and then just be there perpetually. Okay. Neither of us are there yet, okay? But the step 7 is why it's getting so popular, okay? And the step 7 is take wherever and all of the first 6 steps, wherever you recognize those 6 you can get, from your education, from your reading engagement in any kind of community books, the right attitude, the right path you want to be on, and to know it is very easy. But to not distracted, forget this is really hard, right? So
I know. Oh yes, I can testify.
Yeah, mindfulness is a very simple practice. Okay, just calm yourself down, sit down, and then start to say, okay, I want to see how long I can hold on to this idea. For instance, if the key word today for me, is love. Okay,
or
tomorrow
peace,
is the day when I was physically down. I just want to. Sometimes I do this visualization to myself. Okay, I feel my temper getting a little bit too high, so I just pick up the color I feel cool, and I was just sitting down. Say, okay, I want to visualize. See, I can and stay with that visual impression of a pure, clean, cool blue. The color, and make me feel cool. Okay, but I can guarantee that is the goal. And then, but once you start to set the time and the mental, emotional and the physical space, allow yourself to do it, I guarantee you in about 30 seconds, you recognize, all sorts of the ideas and the thoughts. Your brain start to talk about yourself. But that's the point. And the meditation is not to suppress your thought. It's simply you are just sitting there, recognize something is coming, and you recognize you are distracted and call yourself back. Gently, invite yourself back to, the positive energy, positive goal you set up to do for these 10 minutes.
Well, and allowing, right? Allowing so that when those things happen, instead of getting caught up in that, in that, really the messages, right, of self-loathing or self-effacement that are like, oh no, I got distracted, or oh no, I just spent 30 seconds spinning out on thinking about what I don't know, my next phone call, or what we're making for dinner, or what's happening at work tomorrow, right? It's like just being able to give yourself, I mean, what I would say, and this is typically a very Christian term, but give yourself grace. Give yourself space, really to make space, so that, like you said, it's not about getting rid of all those thoughts. It's about making enough space so that when they come, you can acknowledge them and then let them go. Right. Not let them take hold in some sense.
Yes. And sometimes that's the way I told the students in this segment of GPS 120. It's very simple. This practice, mindful practice itself, is simply just help us recognize, oh, I'm distracted. Okay, just invite the mind back to the place it's needed to be. That's all. Otherwise, the problem is we all get carried away. We are all multitasking. We all get carried away. We all have that struggle of the true self, the place I want to be, the reality I'm in. This discrepancy drove us crazy. Okay, so remember, and the first precept we're talking about was no killing, ahimsa, right? And no harm. No harm to others. You need to learn how to love yourself.
Yes. So I was thinking too, the other thing I was thinking is, and this is just in my own practice, right? And so many times I've heard this, and in sitting, one of the things I think about, right, is instead of getting carried away by the river and letting myself get swept up in the current, right, choosing to step out of the river, right, the metaphorical river, right, of my thinking, and right, choosing to step out and to stand on the bank and to watch the river flow, right, to be able to be aware of the flowing of the river and to not get caught up in the current and then, like you said, swept away.
Yeah, you are sitting there and watching, the stream of consciousness or subliminal ideas of X, Y, Z, and then you're watching it, but just like you're watching a movie, right? You don't need to hold on to anything, and all these non-judgmental mentality, so to speak, right? And then we start from where? Start with ourselves, right? And we don't need to be egoistically, and obsessive about ourselves. And then from the other way around, we don't find the excuse and for something things we didn't do. But we are very clear about, and very clear at the same time, very gentle about the path we are on. That's all. Yeah.
This is so good. I'm just thinking, we, even before we started the recording, right, just sort of the intention that we set of allowing this time and space to be something that was really loving and caring and fruitful, and it is, right? I mean, I think ultimately, and maybe we can just wrap it up here, just to think about that what you just said just a few moments ago about really, how can you offer compassion to others and to the world, right? Non-judgment, non-harm, right? That comes from a compassionate, really a compassionate way of treating and dealing with yourself. And that's it. I mean, I think that's it. And that's also fundamental to other religions too.
Yeah, that's the Buddhist practice. They call what? And transmitting the merits. Okay. And each day you start a session of meditation, and you make the wish. All the merits I can possibly accumulate through this sitting, I give that away. To usually the standard way, is I give that away to the one give me birth, give me the friendship in the past, in the present, in the future. Okay, you covered everyone.
Amen. No, that's right. Cover all your bases.
And the same thing, you end the section, you repeat that again. Okay, of course you can do it. And then if anybody, say so and so, at the moment, particularly in your heart, okay, and the cause and the particular group of people's pain at the current moment is really bothering you so much, so deep to your heart. You just start to each day of this practice, so to speak. Okay, just make the offer in the beginning and at the end. Okay, all I'm doing and this tranquility and the peace I can possibly experience through these next 10 minutes, and I want to share it with so and so, so and so, so and so.
That's it. And you have shared with us your wisdom, and hopefully the students in 310 will receive this, and likewise will take it. No, really, we'll take it and we'll do their projects inspired by what you've said, and understanding to a larger degree what it is to be Buddhist, right? What is this philosophy? What is this way of life? And how does it, in a lot of ways, resonate with what some of our students believe and practice already? And how can it speak to and enhance their own faith journey? So, Dr. Chen, Susan, I'm so grateful for you. I really am.
Sure. So basically, I think this conversation is truly interfaith, right?
Yes.
And, everything everything I said, and Dr. Rawson is already immediately can see, oh, this is in Bible, this is this is that, this is exactly what we are doing, right? And then the other day, some of my students in GPS 120 asked me, Dr. Chen, are you a Christian or are you a Buddhist? Okay, I say that I am a Buddhist, believe in God. Okay.
Yeah.
And anything wrong with that? I couldn't see there's anything wrong. Okay. And I am the Buddhist, not affiliated with any temple. And it's like I was not a part of any church. I'm still a newcomer to Wingate. But on the other hand, in my own small universe, I actually see the complementary, the in dialogue and the interface reality is ultimately the same reality.
Well, and I think you and I are both very interfaith people. I mean, within ourselves, right? I mean, that's what we do, right? We find these resonances and we enjoy the ways in which these traditions can be and are very much interconnected.